made to look like he's on the beach, but the illusion is great nonetheless. Looking fantastic, looking very healthy, as most of these silver era bodybuilders did back then. Now, just before doing this video, I actually had another look at this magazine again, and I have to admit that there are some real treasures in here that I haven't covered yet, and I really should, because some of the information I find about the silver era is so applicable to us natural bodybuilders, and I'll get to the articles as we go through the magazine. Now, What's Your Problem didn't really have much, to me at least, much useful information. Here is a great article though, written by David Willoughby. Now, I've mentioned it before and I'll mention it again. David Willoughby really, truly was a fantastic author back in the day. And he never wrote many books, and I find that very unfortunate, because the man was truly, he had so much technically relevant information for natural bodybuilders, especially when it came to realistic muscular and skeletal development. He was all about comparing measurements and really trying to decipher what was achievable for the average human being in terms of development of the human body. And this is what I find so amazing about him. And I'm going to talk a little bit about him a little bit more later on, because it's another great article where he collaborated with George R. Weaver in this particular magazine. However, this particular article, which is on hip and thigh development, I thought was excellent. And the reason is because nowadays, when people talk about doing squatting, a lot of people have the fear of not having the mobility or the conditioning for it. And the importance, firstly, of training the legs and hips, as outlined here by David Willoughby, is that besides training the largest muscles of your body, which I recently did a video about, it improves your blood circulation and the function of your heart and the lungs. This is obvious because you're using the largest muscles in the body. But although this might be obvious, what I absolutely love about this article is the progression. Now, like nowadays, there's a lot of strength coaches which will even teach you routines to prepare for the squat. I mean, that's how bad our civilization has become, where we are so sedentary that we need to literally learn how to squat again, which is a basic thing. I mean, every single baby knows how to squat. And if you go to less civilized countries, and I mean, I say that sarcastically, because in Asian, African, and South American countries where people are subjected to poverty, there's not even benches or anything on the street, and these people just squat all day long. And I mean, that's how they sit. That's how they naturally sit. And because we are in the Western world so used to sitting on chairs, our movement is restricted. Let me get to the point though. I am going off on a tangent. What I love is the progression he gives in the squat. He introduces an exercise that I can't say I've never ever seen, and that is the knee bend. I initially thought that the deep knee bend done with the body weight was done with the foot flat on the floor, but here he shows it with the toes, with your toes on the floor and the heels elevated. And what this exercise does is, firstly, it creates a lot of balance in the body. He recommends that you work up to 60 reps on your body weight alone with your hands outstretched. Can you imagine the core strength you get from that? The hip strength, the back strength, the knee strength, the strength in the joints, the hip, the knee, the ankle, all of it, the toes. I mean, you would develop so much strength. I'm probably going to do a separate article on this if I find more information about it, and maybe explain it better, because I really do believe this is an excellent and forgotten exercise as a progressive tool to enter the squat. He says that once you've mastered this exercise, you should move on to the squat and then eventually to the breathing squat. Wonderful, wonderful progressive method here by a true legend, David Willoughby. Truly worth investigating more and doing a video on this. I really do think so. There's, of course, at the time there was lots of great articles on the gorgeous Val Njord. Won't go too much into that though. The mental aspects of competition was written by Charles A. Smith. There's a great photo here of John Davis. Bill Melby. Now, Bill Melby was said to be the next Mr. America. He had a very Herculean physique. I've covered this article already. And there's some great photos here from this article, Secrets of the Champions, written by Joe Wader. Great photos here of Tanny, of Armand Tanny, as well as Steve Reeves with his variant of the side chest pose with a slight tilt. It's classic Reeves at his best. I've actually got some of these photos up on my Patreon account. Now, this is another great article, again written by David Willoughby. Here he distinguishes the different kinds of pressing, specifically two hands pressing. In the day, the two hands press was actually used as an Olympic lift. You had the snatch, the clean and jerk, and the two hands press. However, here in this article, he really does go on a bit of a rant about how some authorities cannot distinguish between the three types of two hands pressing, of which we have the military press, the Olympic press, the true Olympic press, and the continental press. Now let me explain briefly, but the difference between, for example, the military press and the two hands Olympic press is the position of the feet and any tilt or backward bend at all. So the military press is extremely strict, and it should be performed, according to David Willoughby, with feet together. That is the actual definition of the military press, because you are standing in attention as you would in military service with your feet together. There should be absolutely no back bend whatsoever, and that is the military press. When you compare that to the two hands Olympic press, where your feet can actually be separated by about 16 inches or 40 centimeters apart, and there is a small leeway for tilting your head back only to clear the bar away from you. Finally, the continental press, which again, I covered the difference between the two hands Olympic press and the continental press in a previous video on a review from, I believe it was April 1950, Your Physique, is that the continental press originates from the German style of lifting, where you have extreme back bending as shown here in these photos, right? This is what is defined as the continental press. It's literally a standing bench press where you can arch all the way back and basically use not just your shoulder muscles, but your triceps and chest muscles to push up. It's like an incline press almost, a standing incline press, if you will. And because you are using greater musculature, records of up to 360 pounds by Karl Svoboda, as shown here, were recorded with the continental press. But when you compare that to the two hands military press, where you're supposed to have very minimal and almost no back bend at all, the numbers decline, of course, and that is the French style of lifting, the French style of lifting being much more strict. Another excellent article distinguishing the different styles of lifting. I love reading about David Willoughby. He's very, very precise in what he says. Power exercises for bigger muscles, written by George F. Jowett. I already covered this in a separate video. A great shot here of Alan Pavio. The will to win. What I love about this particular article is not necessarily the information, but it's this photo here of Joe Gold. This has got to be the earliest photo I have ever seen of Joe Gold. If you don't know who Joe Gold and who I'm talking about, we're talking about the creator of Gold's Gym. That's right, that's Joe Gold in the silver era. He created Gold's Gym later on in the I think it was in the late 60s, early 70s, and of course Pumping Iron made Joe Gold's Gym very famous, and it's featured as the mecca of bodybuilding in the 70s. Of course it was, with the only real other competing gym being Vince's gym at the time. But that is Joe Gold at his youngest, and he looks fantastic. He looks Herculean. Another silver era, believe it or not, silver era legend was Joe Gold, the creator of Gold's Gym. Hope you're loving this history. I love talking about the history of bodybuilding, if you haven't noticed yet. Another great, this is the article I was talking about earlier, that David Willoughby collaborated with George R. Weaver in this particular article, because David Willoughby at the time was an expert in taking measurements, accurate measurements of all the bodybuilders, and would often debate measurements taken by other people because they were exaggerated. Whereas David Willoughby was extremely accurate about taking measurements. And here, this is a great article, and I'll tell you why, because he talks about the natural, I guess, possibilities for a natural bodybuilder. What I mean by that is, what is the actual skeletal diameter in particular? That's what this article is about. The skeletal diameter, for example, of the wrist, ankle, and knee for a natural bodybuilder. What is humanly possible without performance enhancing drugs? Performance enhancing drugs, by the way, are not mentioned at all in this article, because I highly doubt that they were used in the day. But it really just talks about what is possible for the average, for the ideal, for the Superman, and for the maximum level. So we've got several levels being talked about. And not only that, but he talks about what I find really interesting is that he talks about how skeletal diameter can actually be thickened. And he references his own book called The Complete Guide to Muscular Measurements, where he actually details how the bones, even after adulthood, can actually be thickened. Now, I'm going to try and source this book out because I find that topic rather fascinating. And I've been actually asked by several people whether bones can actually be thickened over time. I really do believe that's possible. If you look at, men who are labor workers and work in labor throughout their whole lives, they might start off being rather thin in their early 20s, but by the time they're 50 or 60, I mean, these guys, their skeleton is thick. I mean, these guys are thick boned at the end. And I do believe that bone can grow thicker over time. And it would be very interesting to learn more about this. And now that I've got a reference to look up, I might even address that specifically. But as I said, this article is really great in that it talks about the possibilities for a natural lifter, and it even goes through all these tables of the measurements of the wrist, measurements of the what's it called, the knee and the ankle. So we're talking about skeletal measurements in relation to height, and basically you take your own measurements and measure yourself across and go, oh, okay, am I in the average category, ideal, Superman, or maximum? It's an excellent article, it really is. And it really does highlight to me these questions that a lot of natural bodybuilders like myself ask. What is my maximum possible development? Well, he talks about firstly here skeletal development as being one of the first major indicators to truly understand what kind of category you fall on. That's, I guess, in summary, what I was trying to say. That's what makes this article so great. That if your bone size or measurement based on your height is in the average, ideal, Superman, or maximum, you really can gauge your muscular development. Imagine you fall in the ideal or Superman category. Wow, I mean, you can really develop a fantastic physique naturally because you've got the structure to back up that muscular development. It's a really excellent article. I think it's fantastic. Anyway, and that's what I love about David Willoughby's writings. He really does talk about and address the most important issues for natural bodybuilders, which is really, what is my highest possible maximum muscular development with the structure and genetics that I've been given. It's fantastic reading about David Willoughby's work. I wish there was more books written by him, and I may one day have to write a book on all his work because there's so much stuff, and I think it's fantastic. Anyway, the last article that I thought was great, which I've already also covered, is the practice of barbell curling. And I actually did a video on this already, covering all the different types of barbell curls. It's a great read. Anyway, I hope you have enjoyed watching this review on Your Physique, May 1950. Don't mind the emergency services out there. It's really hot here in Switzerland, and I'm pretty sure there's fires going everywhere. Anyway, hope you've enjoyed watching the video. If you have, please give it a thumbs up, and subscribe if you haven't to the Golden Era Bookworm. I'll keep doing more of these reviews because I really like rereading some of these magazines again and discovering these articles which are real golden gems, just little golden nuggets of information sitting in here. They're really fantastic, these old magazines. If you've liked the video, as I said, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't to the Golden Era Bookworm. Thanks for watching. Leave me your comments. You can support my work via PayPal or by becoming a patron, and you can visit my website to purchase courses on bodybuilding, on old school bodybuilding. Anyway, that's it for me. This is the Golden Era Bookworm. Bye for now.